So there's this church, Trinity Presbyterian Church in Tacoma, Washington. And they used to look a lot like us. It's kind of cool. They were started right around the same year we were. They're also 130 years old, which I thought makes the story even cooler. But they, like us, had gotten to a point where they only had 15, 25 people on a Sunday. They had been a vibrant community at one point in time, but over the years, that community had become less and less and less vibrant and more filled with crime and drugs and gangs, and it was really kind of going to the dogs, if you will. It was, which was scaring away people. You know, we have a natural atrophy, right, in the way that our culture is, and then they had added to that. They had the fact that the neighborhood was getting really sketchy, and so it was becoming a problem for the church, and they were wondering, like, are we going to stay in business? Will we last another 100, or that's this time 100 years or whatever? And so, they're praying about it, and I'm happy to say, I'm going to give you the end of the story first. They are now a thriving church. If you were to go to Trinity right now, at the end of service, you'd see hundreds of people streaming out of their church. They've been revived, and I love that story. So I'm like, well, what did you guys do? Like, I want to know, because we're on the other end of that, and we need to see how you did that. And so I've got a couple quotes. One is, it says, the resurrection story of Trinity is a story of witnessing the activity of God in individual lives, in the church and in the neighborhood. This is from Reverend Lynn Longfield. She was pastor of Trinity in 1987 to 97. She said, we didn't cause the resurrection, but simply worked to see what God was doing, and we followed the Spirit's lead. So I'm like, all right, awesome. What did the Spirit have you do? I want to know. So it started with a prayer. One of the members, I should just leave these glasses on. Irene Orlando, they had, like we did, the rooms with the kids' church, downstairs, and she was lamenting that they were so empty. They got to a point where they'd only have a couple kids on a Sunday. And she was like, this isn't the way it's supposed to be. These rooms should be filled with children. And so she walked through the rooms and prayed and prophesied over them that they would be filled with children once again. And then she met Hazel, whose last name is hard to pronounce, Flumisher, a retired teacher. And the schools were also really struggling, which makes sense, because if the community is struggling, the schools often are struggling too. And the schools were struggling. The kids at school were really struggling. A lot of times, kids in poverty, like I'm sure Rhett grew up with a ton of books, and I'm sure you read to him. I'm sure he went to school already knowing his numbers and colors and alphabet and could write his name. Like I remember in kindergarten, my teacher saying, write your name on your paper, and if you don't know how, ask for help. And I'm thinking, who doesn't know how to write their name? I was a snob in kindergarten. But these kids don't, if you don't have books, and if your parents are illiterate or don't care, or they're working 3 jobs and they're never home, and you're being raised by your 12-year-old sibling, they don't go to school having all that stuff. So these kids are really far behind academically. So Hazel's like a retired teacher, and she's like, I don't want to just sit around waiting to die as I get old. I want to do something to give back. So she started a tutoring program at the church. And it started with just a few kids. But now if you go, there's a couple dozen first and second graders. They have 50 to 80 middle schoolers. That is a miracle. When you get middle school kids to show up voluntarily to do tutoring, that is the work of the Lord, because middle school kids are too cool for that. They don't want to go to tutoring. But so it started there. And Hazel and Irene would get their friends together. I assume, the way I read it, I assume it was kind of like some of the retired members of the church would come together, and they would have after-school tutoring and snack. And if you think about, if you're constantly tutoring the same kid, you get to know that child. And then the child would talk about, like, what's going on at home. We don't have enough money for groceries. My mom's car broke down and she doesn't have anyone to fix it. Like, whatever. The kids just naturally would tell. This is what kids do. They're talking about their lives. And so then that gave the church an opportunity to be like, hey, we've got a mechanic who works here, or we've got somebody who could fix your oil or do whatever. We've got, let me send you home with some groceries. And it grew, and it became a food pantry, and it became a clothing drive, and it became, they partnered with another church, and together with this other church, they started like a little clinic where people could go and get some basic medical care and medical needs met. And I just think, like, that's what happens when the church really becomes the church community, like gets into their community, starts loving on their community. A lot of people, when the community starts to like take a downward church, like a downward drive, a lot of people are like, oh, this is getting ugly, peace out, and they leave. But as Christians, we should have the opposite reaction, right? We should be like, oh, things are crap, I need to show up. Instead of just leaving, I should show up and see what I can do to bring the love of the Lord into that situation. And that's what the people of Trinity did. And now when you ask like why this all happened, Pastor Robin Gormley says, this mostly blue-collar bunch of older folks were there a long time and found compelling how loving their community was and engaged in being in their church. And so as this happened, as these people in the community started to see how much these church people were loving on their kids, they naturally wanted to check out the church. And that just started to naturally bring people into the church. The Spirit was moving in that space, and people wanted to get on board with that. When the Spirit is moving, people want to get on board with it. When the Spirit is moving and you people feel the presence of God, they want that. We each have in our hearts like a little magnet towards the Lord, right? Like when we feel that presence of Him, we feel that Spirit moving, we want naturally to get involved in that. And so when you have a group of people coming together, that energy starts to get bigger. You know, it's kind of like if you put string a bunch of batteries together, it suddenly has a lot more power. You know, one battery by itself doesn't have a lot of power. But when you start stringing a bunch of batteries together, suddenly you have more power. You know, where 2 or 3 are gathered, that's where the Lord is. And that's what Trinity did. They're like, we're going to be 2 or 3 gathered, and we're going to bring the Lord to these kids. And then we're going to be 5 or 10 gathered, and now that there's so many of us, we're going to bring the love of the Lord to this community, this space. And it was a resurrection for their church. And I just love that. Instead of focusing on themselves, they focused on their community. It's really easy, and I know I get this way. When I'm exhausted, I don't have the energy to think about anybody else. I barely have enough energy to think about myself. You know? And it's our natural tendency when we're exhausted and when we're getting into survival mode to like focus on ourselves. And here at Trinity, and I was reading through Compassion International site, and they had a couple of other testimonies where instead of focusing on themselves, they're like, if we're going to go out, we're going to go out with a bang. If we're going to go out, we're going to go out serving the Lord. And that energy brought, like, they were like, Spirit, where do you want us to go? And the Spirit's like, go over there. And they're like, all right, we'll do that. And they did, and now it brought vibrancy to their church. And I just love that. And that's who we are. You know, we believe so much in mission that our mission statement, pun intended, is all about serving our community, because we are a people who believe what Trinity believes. We are a group of people who believe that it is important to serve our community. And as I finish, this is the last installment, if you will, on our mission statement sermon series, my question is, how are we serving our community as an individual and as a group? You know, it'd be really easy to accept the favor of the Lord and take our bat and go home, right? I got mine and I can go home. I have a job, I have good health, I'm good, I'm going to hang out in my house. It'd be really easy for us to do that. But not even Jesus did that. Jesus was the Lord, and He lived on this earth, and He didn't come and be like, all right, everybody, come and worship me. You know, He didn't ride in and want all the palm trees. Like, He wasn't a God who's like, before I come in, I want you to have all the palm trees and like the red carpet laid out. Like some of these like diva movie stars, if you've ever seen some of the lists before they'll come to a like shooting, they're like, I need this kind of water and I need this kind of fluffy pillow.
But the green ones.
Yeah, I want a bowl of only green M&Ms. Like Jesus had every right to be a diva and come and like expect preferential treatment. And that's not what He was. Instead, it said that He, just as the Son of Man, did not come to be served, but to serve and give His life as a ransom to many. And that's what we are called. As Christians, we are many Christ, and we are not called to be served, but to serve and to give our lives over to the people around us in our community. And we're small. Like we are a small community, we're a small church. And so, do I expect you to go out and end world hunger? No, I don't. I mean, if you can, awesome. If that is God's call to you, do it, right? But our call is to our community. The reason we put the word community in our thing is because that's our call. So my question to you this week is, think about what gifts you have and how can you use them for the good of your community. And your community could be Ludlow-Bromley. I live in Ludlow and I serve in Bromley. So like for me, my community is the school and this like city Ludlow-Bromley. Some of us don't live in Ludlow. So maybe your community is your street. Maybe your community is where you work. Maybe your community is, maybe you have a big family. Maybe your community is your family and serving your family. So my question to you is, ask yourself, ask the Lord, where are you moving, Lord? Where are you working? I want to hop on your train. I want to be wherever you're going. Not my will, but yours be done in my life. May I not be the one who's getting served, but help me, show me, Lord, how to serve using the gifts you've given me. And each of us has a different gift. John uses his gifts of time and his massive amounts of energy to keep this building running and to serve food to people through the food pantry. Paula uses her gifts by playing the music and running parades and community events to keep all that stuff creates a community in our community. Like she is doing those things to bring people together and bring back that feel of small town like joy. Like we need people to use those gifts in that way, and each of us has a different gift. Okay, I can't do John's gift. I can't do John's job because that's not my gift. We each have our own. So how is the Lord, where is the Lord moving? What gifts has he given you? And ask him if you're using them in the way he wants you to. And where he wants you to go. Where is his will for your life? What is his will for your gifts? Who is your community? And how does the Lord want you to serve in that community? And all of God's people said, amen. One last thing I was just thinking, now that I link 9/11. Do you guys remember when 9/11 hit? Those of us who were alive back then. Remember right after that, I felt like as a nation, we came together as a community. We got out of our houses, we put our flags on our porches, we served, we helped, we remembered that we are a brotherhood of people. And I feel like as a nation, we have gotten away from that. I feel like as a nation, we have gone in the house and shut the door and turned on the TV. And we have forgotten that we have neighbors. We have forgotten that we're supposed to be people of a community. And so remember, as we remember 9/11, let's remember what it felt like for those of us who are alive on 9/12. Let's remember what that felt like, the way we came together and wanted to serve and help our community. Now, and all of God's people said, amen. If you have not surrendered your heart to the Lord and would like to do that, please come see me either during the song or after service, and I will walk you through that process. If you need prayer, see me after service, and I would gladly pray for you. We're going to, our invitation hymn is The Bond of Love, number 423.